Good evening, or I guess morning, to some of you whenever you happen to be listening to this. Thank you for coming and joining me on the Against the Grain podcast, our first major edition of the Against the Grain, where I try to read the grain podcast. I like to throw in that second line, reading the grain, because it is Against the Grain picks, but we're trying to read the grain. Also something a little bit significant or a little tie into golf, as that's what, of course, the golfers do when they're on the green. They try and read the grain. So anyways, what I do in this podcast is I go over a bit of the article that I post for free, of course, on Awesemo.com. And what I do is I go up and down the pricing sections that I have identified, talk about some of the higher-owned plays, and maybe some pivots off of them. So let's jump right in, and as I do on every Against the Grain pod, I review last week's Millionaire Maker, except I guess it's a half Millionaire Maker from last week. It was a great lineup. Under 50% total ownership. It didn't even have the winner in it, and it won by a good, healthy margin over 10 points. You just love to see something like that. Under 50% total ownership, like I said, Dustin Johnson, Tom Lewis, Brooks Koepka, Matt Fitzpatrick, followed by Phil Mickelson. I mean, just, again, a really quality line. You had two guys. You had a lot of guys actually under 5% there, not just two guys, I should say. Just a really, really quality built line, really well thought out. Oh, Daniel Berger, Daniel Berger was the third guy in there. No guy priced over $10,000, even though we had Justin Thomas win it. Just an interesting way it shook out. Okay, so before we move on, I want to turn our attention to some giveaways that we got going on this week. Of course, it is the PGA Championship, and if you're not already an Awesemo Plus member, it's a great time to do so. We've got two majors coming up soon. I'm sure if you've listened to some of my other content this week, you've already heard this before. $8.95 to join us. You're going to get, if you join us for the next month, you're going to get two majors, the FedEx Cup playoffs, and so much more. So great time to do so. $8.95 for the week, $29.99 for the month. Okay, so let's go on and head in to talk about the Millionaire Maker contest and some picks and pivots off of them. So we'll start off up at the 10,000 range this week. Of course, 6 golfers for a major that are at 10K or over. Justin Thomas leading, of course, at 11.3. Then Koepka, McIlroy, Rahm, DeChambeau, and Schauffele. I see it shaping out that Brooks Koepka at 11,000, even though it's a major, I think he's going to probably come in the 13 to 15% range. And I think the lowest owned guy here could end up being Rory McIlroy, as crazy as that sounds. Maybe Bryson DeChambeau. Maybe, I guess, Justin Thomas. But now I've almost said everybody in this range. So what that basically means is I'm projecting everybody to be owned between 12 and 15%. I did note that since Rory has been playing the worst out of really all of these guys, specifically since the return of golf, definitely could see him coming in the lowest owned out of all of them. But again, not really an opportunity to get any of these guys below 10%. Possibly in a single entry, you could look at maybe getting Bryson, especially if Bryson is in the bad weather draw. You could see Bryson under 10% owned this week in some single entry stuff. All right, now when we move down to the next price section, in the total of those guys, just want to mention those 6 guys, we're going to get close to 100% in those 6 guys. With nobody really getting over 20%, you can see how just spaced out and even, I shouldn't say spaced out, how evenly spread ownership is up at the top this week. We're going to see something similar in the 9 to 8K range where there's only 13 guys to choose from, but of those 13, you're getting 200% total ownership, so almost 20% per golfer. Again, very evenly spread. The lowest owned guy I have projected, which I just can't imagine this is going to happen, is Tiger Woods, coming in around 12%. With Dustin Johnson coming in around 20%. Johnson obviously has had a superb record in majors over the last 5. Now, granted, he doesn't have a win, but at $9,000 and, somewhere like 8th or 9th or maybe even 10th on the board, he's just going to come in the top 10. He's got 2 of those in the last 5 starts, plus he's made every cut. So certainly a level of stability and confidence gamers are seeing in Dustin Johnson's price this week at $9,000. Expect him to come over 20%. Ty Hatton goes from 9,700 down to 8,000. I suspect a lot of gamers will just try and go back there, as he hasn't missed a cut in his last couple of majors as well. And Hideki Matsuyama has his lowest price in quite some time at $8,200. I expect both Hatton and Matsuyama to be around 17 to 20% this week. Patrick Cantlay's price has come down as his form hasn't been great. Still, him and Webb Simpson, I can't imagine will get any less than 15 or 16%. However, I do suspect that that'll be the last of the guys getting over 15% from this price section this week. Ricky Fowler, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Reed, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Daniel Berger, Jason Day, Victor Hovland, and even Tiger Woods. I suspect all of them to be between 10 and 15% owned this week. So I don't think you're going to be able to, again, get any leverage. So now we've talked about almost the top 20 golfers on the slate. I don't think any of them are going to be below 10%. Crazy how it's shaking out, but it is a major, and normally the top 20 or so golfers do have the best chance to win it. So I guess no surprise there to see nobody below 10%. I think if anybody does, it could be Tiger Woods. As crazy as that sounds. Now when we move into the 7K section, we're still, even if you throw in Gary Woodland, Tony Finau, Adam Scott, Justin Rose, Abraham Answer, Tommy Fleetwood, and Jordan Spieth, all of those guys would now, that makes the top 25 golfers on the slate by price on DraftKings. Every single one of them I have projected to be over 10%. I got Fleetwood and Woodland coming in pretty close to 20, as Finau and Answer between 15 and 20. Whereas Jordan Spieth, Adam Scott, and Justin Rose, I have between 10 and 15%. Just crazy how it's working out, though. The top 25 golfers all getting over 10% this week. Just of those top 25 golfers this week, which is, again, we don't typically see this. When I say top 25, I mean top 25 priced by salary. They are making up. It's a crazy number. Again, this is one of the highest numbers that I have seen in quite some time. They're totaling 386%. Just the top 25 golfers are totaling almost 400% total ownership. That leaves 120 more golfers with only 120% total ownership between them. So just goes to show you how heavily concentrated this major is shaping out to be. Still a couple of more guys in that 7K range that could get close to 10%. Guys like Louis Oosthuizen, Mark Leishman, Shane Lowry, Sergio Garcia, maybe even Phil Mickelson coming in off his top 5 last week. Ches Reavie and Billy Horschel also getting plenty of attention. Maybe two surprises here, Scotty Scheffler and Harris English. Well, maybe not a surprise on Harris English. He's played pretty well. But certainly Scotty Scheffler, Awesemo hasn't projected over 10%. There's a little bit of a free giveaway there. I see him coming in closer to 8%, but still a good amount of ownership. Brendan Todd will also get plenty of looks as well. So all in all told, again, like I said, it's going to be hard-pressed to find in the top 25 golfers. Going to be hard to find guys that are projected under 10% this week. Certainly none under 9%, I'll say. Maybe a couple of guys slide just in under 10%. Maybe it'll be Jordan Spieth, but looks like this week more people are apt to play him. It is a major after all. Okay, as we move down the 7K section, a bunch of more guys that are certainly going to be owned. Maybe not highly owned, but going to be looked at. Corey Connors, Cam Champ, Christian Benzenhout. As well as a couple more Ian Poulter, a couple more Euros, I meant to say. Ian Poulter, Matt Wallace, and Tom Lewis, and Eric Van Rooyen. Okay, let's move on to the last section, 6K. Then I'm going to touch briefly on FanDuel and SuperDraft before I get on out of here. Again, we like to keep these 12 to 15 minutes. We just talk strictly about ownership, so that's what I'm trying to do in this pod for people that care zero about if you need to hit the fairway or not, or how many times Brendan Todd has hit fairways where other people haven't. If you don't care about any of that stuff and you just want to play against the grain and go against guys that are not being picked by others, this is the podcast and the article for you. Okay, so let's move into the 6K section. Ryan Palmer, right at 6,900. No surprise to see him come in as the highest owned of golfers down here. He's had maybe a little bit of a bumpy start since the restart, but certainly a lot of good ones. Switching over to FanDuel just for a second, Mateus Schwab is 6,900 on DK, but is the min price on FanDuel. So expect to see him on FanDuel come in over 10% owned in the $500 contest, maybe even eclipsing 10% owned in the big GPP as well. A couple of other guys going to get between 5 and 10% this week. At least I project him to do so. Joel Damon, Lucas Glover, Brant Snedeker with the namesake all the way down here at 6,900. Cameron Tringale. I'm sorry, now I'll say Cameron Tringale starts the guys that I expect between 2 and 5% this week. Cameron Tringale, Doc Redman, Nick Taylor, Dylan Fratelli, Brendan Steele, Emiliano Grillo, JT Poston, and Harold Varner III. So a lot of guys there that I mentioned. Again, if you want to go against the grain and you like some golfers in this 69 in this 6K range, and you want to go say 10%, likely you're going to get 3 to 5x on that golfer versus the field. So certainly something to think about if you do have a hunch or have a read on somebody that is priced down here. Not a lot of ownership going to here. A lot of focus, as I said, on that 7K section, which is the strongest I've ever seen it. The reason why I say it's the strongest I've ever seen it is because guys like Gary Woodland, Tommy Fleetwood, Tony Finau, Adam Scott, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Rose, all in the last 5 majors have been above 8,500, let alone below 8,000. A lot of focus is going to be going on those guys and a few other guys, of course, that are playing well priced around them, like Abraham Ancer, Louis Oosthuizen, and the like. Okay, so let's move on quickly to FanDuel before I talk about SuperDraft, the sponsor of this show. I appreciate it, and do a little bit of a segment on them. FanDuel, what's interesting about them is you can certainly use the pricing differential from DraftKings to your advantage here to try and guess who's going to be lower owned. For example, Jordan Spieth, I just mentioned, he's 10,500 on FanDuel, about 400 or 500 more than the average price, 500 more than the average price, so much higher than he is on DK. And with that being said, he's likely to come in below 5% owned throughout the contest. So if you're looking to get leverage on Spieth, or at least maximum leverage on Spieth, which everybody knows that I am, I'll be playing him over on FanDuel. Colin Morikawa also has been trending lower on FanDuel these last few weeks. Just something that I wanted to bring up there. A couple of other guys as well on FanDuel that is expected to be low owned, maybe on both sites. Justin Rose, certainly expected to be really low owned on FanDuel, though. He's 10,400, similar to Spieth, but it looks like people will be more apt to play Spieth over Rose. So certainly if you're looking to go against the grain, Justin Rose will help you provide that. A couple of other guys that are priced pretty high that are expected to be very low owned on FanDuel. Paul Casey in at 9,600, much more expensive than he is on his DraftKings price. A couple of more guys down there as well. At 9,000, you've got Danny Willett. He's projected at about 1%. A couple of other higher price guys. Tommy Fleetwood projected under 10% on FanDuel, as well as Adam Scott and Tiger Woods. Okay, let's do the last part of this where I talk about SuperDraft. I am going to give you a couple of plays, against the grain plays for the multiplier contest. And if you haven't checked out the multiplier contest, it is a great way to differentiate your lineups. So let me tell you a little bit about SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports have arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier, as I was just talking about. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want to. SuperDraft offers contests right now in NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft using promo code Awesemo10 and claim your first $10 free on a deposit of 10 or more and $20 free on your first deposit of 100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits and more winnings. Okay, so now we are looking at the multiplier this week. 1.5 is our highest multiplier. A lot of the names you're going to see down at the 1.5 are those PGA professionals that I've talked about a couple of times this week. However, if you go digging in, they're still at 1.45x starts some of those PGA Tour players. Most of the PGA Tour players, though, that you would at least want to think about playing, 1.35x. A couple of guys like Max Homa also seems to be a good price. He has been informed recently. I expect most of these golfers down here to be pretty low owned. A couple of other guys that are low owned that have a good multiplier. Luke List, who's had a couple of good starts. Christian Bezuidenhout, 1.3x as well. along with Russell, Henley, and a couple of other guys down here. And especially with a tournament that is going to have so many pars and not as many birdies because it's a major, that multiplier of getting those pars at 1.3x versus somebody at flat 1 certainly going to make a difference come the end. So take a look at a couple of those golfers. Like I said, Max Homa, Luke List, Kristen Bezuidenhout, and Russell Henley. All right, that's going to do it for me here on the Against the Grain pod. We are at 15 minutes almost on the dot. Hopefully, I've given you a few Against the Grain plays to take a look at this week and a good indication of what the ownership is going to shake out as. So until next time, everybody, we do have a little bit of a weather element going on. I know, sadly, we were unable to get, because of the hurricane, unable to get out the fantasy preview show with Ben Raza and Timothy Frank. So Ben Raza and I are going to give it our all tomorrow night. We're going to be breaking down the weather, breaking down the waves, breaking down the players, and so much more. So join us 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we get ready for the 102nd PGA Championship. Until then, everybody, we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.